Have you ever stared at a blank paper not knowing how to start your drawing? Well, in this video I'm going to help you with that. Hello and welcome to Aurea Illustration and to lesson 4 of the beginner series. I'm going to show you how to draw from big to small. This is another basic that is really going to make your life easier as an artist. It's going to help you as you start adding details to your drawings and your studies, and it'll make it easier to finish a drawing successfully. In the previous lesson, you actually already saw me do this in simple steps. I mainly covered how to make simple studies, and we were mostly focused on the outlines and the biggest shapes of the subjects. But you saw me getting into some detailing after I established the biggest shapes that I saw from the references. The reason why we work in this hierarchy from big to small is to stay in control over the drawing as a whole. This way, it makes it easier to put the right things at the right placements. Think back and ask yourself, have you ever started a drawing focused on one specific detail of the subject you wanted to draw, and then gotten lost in the drawing? Perhaps you were drawing from imagination and started with an eye or a mouth, or you were drawing with a reference and focused first on the detail you liked the most. Naturally, you can start your drawing any way you like, but let's compare it to writing a story. What if you started with chapter 1, but you had no clear idea of what the last chapter will be like? That would make it really hard to organize all the information you have and make a coherent story. Perhaps you'll be able to follow your own story, but likely the audience will get confused because there's no clear direction and you're just writing what comes to mind. So wouldn't it be easier if you had outlined the beginning, the end, and the middle of the story in small notes or even in a summary? That's exactly what you're doing when you are drawing from big to small. You're making clear what your beginning and your ending is. And working this way, you mark the most important parts of your drawing. It will also be easier to get an image from your imagination onto paper, and do that quickly before you've lost your focus. Once you have the most important parts of your drawing down, you can always go back and forth to mend details and adjust shapes a little bit, but now you've got your base to work from. This will prevent the drawing from not looking coherent and give you more control over your drawing. For example, if you're not drawing from big to small, certain elements of the drawing could easily be the wrong size, like an eye that's much bigger than the other eye, or other details could be in the wrong placements, which will make your drawing look off. So I hope I'm getting across how this way of working can save you a lot of frustration and can make drawing easier. So now that we know why there is a hierarchy, let's implement it. 1. Let's study the object. I prepared this picture of a simple statue. I chose it because it's pretty simple and it has clear shapes. First, we're going to look at it carefully and identify the simple shapes that we can find. We're only looking at the big shapes, not any small detailing like the facial features or folds of the clothing. I'm going to draw on top of it with green to show you the shapes that I'm seeing. The shapes should be clear in your head, but they don't need to be the perfect square or circle we've practiced in lesson 2. Now that you're familiar with shapes, you can modify them as you go along. As you can tell, I went a little too far with the smaller shapes. Now I'm stepping back here and I'm undoing some of the shapes that I made. If you're going to do this yourself in a drawing program or printing out a reference and draw the shapes on top of it, start with the biggest shapes and you can stop when it gets too messy or when you lose sight of the shapes. You can also do this mentally without drawing. The important thing is that you take your time to look and to identify the shapes that you see. 2. Make a study. My first step in this study is splitting up the object into multiple big shapes. We already identified them by carefully looking at the photo, but now we're going to start drawing. You can make different choices from your observation, like I'm doing here with starting with the head as a square instead of an oval. When you're actually drawing, you'll feel things differently. than when you're just observing. Go with your intuition, and it's okay to start over when it doesn't work out. Your aim here is to learn from it, not to make the perfect art piece. Here you can see me making a sketch with only shapes. Later I will adjust the opacity and start to draw on top of it. It's sort of like a map. You could also do this traditionally by lighting your pencil with an eraser. Now you might be thinking that the biggest shape is the torso and the lower body, so I should start there. It is the biggest shape, but the reason I'm not starting there is because I like to start at the focus point. It's not the biggest shape, but it's the most important shape. Usually with a human body, the face is where most people will look at first, so I call it the focus point. That said, you can start with whatever shape attracts you the most. And as always, you should experiment with what works the best for you. Try out different starting points. The best part to start is where you have the most control. For me, that's the face. The important thing is that each area or shape that you choose to start with is that you start big there. So I draw a square for the face, but I don't start with any facial features before I've drawn the other big areas of the statue. Another thing I'm thinking about is also the space between the shapes. When I notice something is too far apart, I adjust that as well, like I just did with the sheep. I've now lowered the opacity, and on top of the sketch I start to draw more loosely, and not specific shapes anymore, but I do take them as a guideline. I still think about basic shapes even when I'm not drawing them. That is to keep things clear in my head. But as I draw now, I'm mostly focused on making smooth lines that follow along with the rough sketch that I made. But I still don't go into detail. I'm working big, thinking about the whole of the statue instead of focusing on a specific part of it. And I'm still observing the photograph and taking my time to look at it while I'm drawing. Placement and the space between the shapes are important. Those are the main things I look at now when I'm studying my reference. Where goes what and how far are they spaced from each other? These are the questions I constantly ask myself. Keep yourself alert and don't drift off with your study. But keep asking questions and look for answers in your reference. Again, you don't need perfection here, and nitpicking is not going to be helpful, but staying on track and focused will help you learn. I'm also correcting as I go along. Again, not nitpicking, but when I see something off and I know how to correct it, I will do that. It's also okay to start over once or a couple of times, as long as you identify the mistakes you made and you're not just guessing. Identifying and correcting mistakes will make you grow in your art really quickly. In the previous lessons, I didn't speed up the process, but I felt it was taking too long, so I sped up parts of this lesson. If you need it, you can always lower the speed of the video in YouTube. I've already started to add some smaller details. I sometimes need some little lines here and there to further guide me along the drawing. And the more you will draw, the more insight you'll get on what you need to get the best drawing down. You'll get to know yourself and what you need as an artist better the more you draw while being alert and focused. And you can tell now the most important big areas of the statue is done. I'm starting to work on the smaller shapes, like the dogs. So the main problem that I notice with my study is that the body is too broad compared to the reference. So here I try to slim it down a little bit. Now that the overall figure of the statue is drawn, as well as some of the bigger details like the dogs, I'm going in for the smaller features. Have you noticed that drawing the reference is a lot easier this way? Now everything is in its place, the skeleton of the drawing is done, and you can complete it by dressing it up with details. It's like saving the best for last. I always look forward to when I can draw the details, so it keeps me motivated during the whole of the drawing as well. Now that I've looked closely at the details, I notice that the statue's face is smiling. I hadn't noticed that before, even when I looked at it for such a long time. I think that's also something very enjoyable, to keep on discovering the object that you're drawing. You can also practice this hierarchy of drawing when you're working from imagination. The important part is to know what you want to draw. Taking a reference as a starting guide is okay as well. Just try it, draw, and have fun. And let me know in the comments how your experience was. Any feedback on my lessons are appreciated as well. Let me know if you found my lessons helpful and if you've seen improvement with your art. And a little side note, I also have a website where I've got my portfolio and where I post free coloring pages. You can download them in the web shop. 3. Compare. And here's my study. It's not a perfect copy, but it's recognizable, and I actually like how it turned out, so let's compare it. I'm going to put it on the photo to see where I went off. And as you can tell, the study is a little longer than the reference. The sheep is too big and the shepherd's stick too far off to the right. So I pretty much scaled some things more broadly. But as you can tell, the torso I corrected ended up pretty accurate, and I like that. So how did your study go? Try to be critical, but also be pleased with it. Notice also the good things and not just the mistakes, and learn from the mistakes. I know I will. And if you want to practice this week, make some studies like the one I just showed, going from big to small. And try out drawing something from imagination as well. Thank you for watching, and like and subscribe if you want more drawing lessons like this one. Have fun drawing and God bless.